Maybe just, okay, great.
Sorry.
All right, you should now be able to see my screen. Thank you all again for joining, and I'm not sure that I introduced myself, so sorry about that. Although I know many of the folks on the call, my name is Hazel Shapiro, and I'm a member of the IARPC Secretariat and happy to be with you all today to discuss the Interagency Arctic Research Policy Committee, the Arctic Research Plan, and specifically how they relate to data and technology topics. Before we dive in, I want to give some context about IARPC. Many of you may be aware of IARPC's mission and function, but for those of you who are newer to the world of IARPC, IARPC is an interagency. Oh, let me go through. This is just quickly our agenda for today. So I'll do an overview and update. We'll hear a little bit about the data management team, a little bit about the tech innovation and application team, and then focus mostly on discussion and questions and answers. As I was saying, IARPC is an interagency working group of the National Science and Technology Council. We are tasked with enhancing research in the Arctic by bringing together federal agencies to coordinate and enhance their work. We also facilitate conversations and build connections among federal agencies, researchers, Arctic communities, and others who live and work in the Arctic, both in the United States and internationally. To do this, we bring together leaders from 18 agencies, departments, and offices across the federal government. And we also run a website that you may be familiar with, IARPC Collaborations, which is a web platform that facilitates collaborations between federal agencies and non-federal groups and researchers with interest in the Arctic region. IARPC Collaborations has over 4,000 members spanning different disciplines, agencies, organizations, and countries. IARPC Collaboration hosts a number of teams, including the Data Management and Technology Innovation and Application Collaboration teams who are hosting this webinar today, and you'll hear again from the co-leads of those teams later in the session. A little bit of background, IARPC was created in 1984 under the Arctic Research and Policy Act, or ARPA. The act called for a comprehensive national policy focused on research needs and objectives in the Arctic, which IARPC is required to update every 5 years. The work of IARPC and IARPC Collaborations is organized around this Arctic Research Plan, which outlines areas for collaborations among U.S. federal agencies and researchers. In the past, IARPC has focused on basic fundamental research, which is necessary to understand Arctic processes. In recent years, IARPC has built on this understanding to tackle the big interdisciplinary science questions that we need to support a thriving ecosystem and Arctic communities. We are currently implementing the Arctic Research Plan 2022 to 2026, which you see pictured on the slide, and seeking input on what the next Arctic Research Plan should look like, which will run from 2027 through 2031. In this meeting, I'm not going to go through the whole structure or background on the current Arctic Research Plan. We had a webinar last week, which gave a really detailed overview of process and structure, and I'd encourage you to watch the webinar for that if you are interested in those pieces. As I said, the goal for this meeting is to collect input and have a discussion around data and technology topics, which are reflected as foundational activities in the current plan. As we look forward to the next Arctic Research Plan, let us all consider what changes should be made to best reflect the research needs in the Arctic. But before we discuss your input, here's a quick overview of the process. So from July through November 15th, November 15th is the important date here. We are conducting an engagement and collecting input. And at this time, all of your input, as well as input from federal agencies, will be passed along to federal drafting teams who will start writing the Arctic Research Plan 2027 to 2031. Once the plan is drafted, it will be reviewed and cleared at the interagency level and then released for public review and comment. This will likely be in late spring 2026. Following public review and comment, the drafting teams will come together again to review all input and finalize the Arctic Research Plan 2027 through 2031. The plan will then go through final review and clearance at the interagency level and be released in early 2027. This timeline is subject to change, and if it does, we will communicate any updates to the timeline and process as those become available. So how can you submit comments? First is you can submit comments during the meeting today. So we are going to take some notes, and your comments made during this call will be considered as public input. That said, we still encourage you to submit written comments via these 3 mechanisms so that your comments can be recorded and reflected in your own voice. So those would be sending to the Federal Register notice, and this QR code should take you there, and I'm sure we can put some links in the chat, emailing iarpicplan@nsf.com, or sending written comments via physical mail to Roberto Delgado at the National Science Foundation. We're also hosting a number of additional listening sessions in the coming weeks. I'm not going to read through all of these, but as I said, this conversation will be focused on data and technology topics. If you're interested in other topics like observing or modeling, community resilience and health, permafrost, etc., please continue to join these listening sessions. And all of this information is on the IARPC Collaborations website. Additionally, if you'd like someone from the IARPC Secretariat to present information about the plan at an upcoming meeting that you're hosting, please don't hesitate to reach out and we'll do our best to do that. As you are considering your input, we encourage you to think about these 2 questions. What are the critical Arctic issues and needs where federally funded science and technology research should provide knowledge to promote sound decision-making? And what are examples of research questions that address these issues? You can look to the current Arctic Research Plan and suggest what to keep, what to add, what to remove, or what to edit, or simply offer fresh guidance. The update process is responsive to new and emerging priorities from the current presidential administration, so tying any input to these priorities, particularly where these priorities overlap with the needs and interests of other stakeholders, is encouraged. We've also been getting questions about how changes in federal funding and staffing will impact the Arctic Research Plan. I'll just note that all of the deliverables in the plan will be associated with active lines of funding or effort within federal agencies. IARPC is working with the IARPC agencies to understand where there will be funding changes to ensure the Arctic Research Plan reflects these changes and new opportunities. We are also working to build a structure that can accommodate changes, recognizing that there is some ongoing uncertainty around federal funding levels. So with that, I'll pause and see if there are any questions. And here's a couple of resources that you can also continue to refer to, the information page on the IARPC website, and you can always email the IARPC Secretariat to ask questions, plan@iarpccollaboration.org. Are there any questions about the process, timeline, those kind of pieces before we hear specifically about the data management and technology topics? All right, hearing none, feel free to put questions in the chat if they come up during the rest of the presentation. I believe I am passing it to Lauren. And if you could introduce yourself, that would be great as well.
Can you hear me? Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Decker. I'm with Polarctic, and we're a private company that does environmental modeling, and we do a lot of our development with artificial intelligence. My hat that I am wearing today is a non-federal co-lead for the IARPC data management team. And on that note, if you are a federal employee, we are interested in recruiting more for our co-lead teams here. But today I am presenting the slide where the overarching objective of the data management team is to encourage and implement fair and care data management principles through the enhanced coordination and collaboration across multiple levels in Arctic research. This is something that I've loved seeing develop over the last 20+ years, where we were teaching and convincing people to, what is metadata, and please use metadata, and please don't scan your PDF or take a screenshot and save that and call it good. And we've really, this concept where you can have something that's got good metadata standards and it becomes findable in a database, where you can go to that database after finding it and download it and it becomes accessible, where the data formats are, you know, one-upping from a PDF and getting into, you know, an Excel spreadsheet at least, where you can like interoperably use it. And making data useful has been this really great backbone to see associated with the growth of data management over the past, 20 plus years. It's always a work in progress. And so it's really great to like continue to push these file formats and databases and who saves it when and where. But the new kid on the block is CARE data management principles. And this system is really where the data management team has been putting a lot of its recent webinar efforts. And that's this idea that the internet's been wonderful for sharing everything, but now we need to think more about who owns it, who's responsible for it, where's the ethics, is this for the collective benefit? And so coming up with that, promoting those sort of structures, how can we tangibly build stuff like we have with metadata for being able to be findable in a database? What kind of legal structures can we talk about in promoting this in the data management team? So next slide is just our recent webinars. Oh, is that the next slide? Oh, there we go. So these are just some of the last recent webinars. Caring for Arctic Data and Indigenous Data Sovereignty has been a series that we've been working on. Leading ethical stewardship, responsible AI, and care. And then a lot of our FAIR meetings have been joint meetings with CI permafrost modelers and field ops teams. So we love, as a foundational group, we love our joint meetings. So if other people are interested in having the data management team support you and ask the really obnoxious FAIR and care questions during the meetings, we can be there. And that's sort of where I wanted to leave it for the data management team's focus. And I'm going to be passing it off now to the technology team. I'm not sure who's speaking. Is it
It's
Lisa
me.
or Jonathan? Okay.
Yeah, but before we move off our team, let's just have Emma Menio introduce herself.
Hey everyone, I'm Emma Menio. I am also a non-federal co-lead for the data management team, and I look forward to the discussion later. Thanks.
And I'll ask now our tech team co-leads to introduce themselves. Mark, please.
Hi there, I'm Mark Seefeld. I'm a research scientist at University of Colorado Boulder, and I've done work with the Arctic and also some Antarctic field work, which helps explain some of the expansion that we have, including Antarctic in our tech team involvement.
Great, Lisa.
And I'm Lisa Sheffield Guy. I'm the Regional Ocean Partnership Program Manager for the Alaska Ocean Observing System. It's quite a mouthful, and I'm one of the non-federal co-leads for the technology team.
Yeah, and they have been super instrumental. I'm also a co-lead for tech team. I'm a federal employee. And if you weren't aware, that the teams are composed of federal and non-federal leaders, because this is one of IARPC's strengths, is it's able to integrate across sectors. And for the technology team, that's been very important. We want to incorporate perspectives from the private sector, academia, what I'd call like the military agencies, because they have a large role in the Arctic and a different flavor of research than the academic ones in many cases. And then, obviously federal agencies, and it's all for the benefit of improving the Arctic Research Plan. So in addition, so the tech team has followed this rough, seasonal progression, because we know a lot of the tech team members, people we aspire to attract to our meetings, they are going to be out in the field in their respective spring, summers. So for Antarctica, it's out of sequence with the Arctic, and that works out pretty well. So we can invite them to come speak to us. We're also doing external engagement outside of, this IARPIC group. So we're trying to reach out, really engage with the broader research community during the fall, winter. We're trying to make meetings, catch up with other teams. In the spring, we try to create at least one meeting just for the tech team. In summer, we pretty much are not planning any public meetings, but the co-leads will meet and plan the next year. So we have this cycle, and I think this is a good model for all the teams, in fact. Could I get to the next slide, please? So yeah, this is an example of one of our meetings. This is from August 2022, and it shows you like the flavor of things that we'll bring together, the topics, and take some time to bring people together in this way because of busy schedules and whatnot. But this is a really good meeting from a couple of years ago, and Michael Steele from University of Washington was talking about sail drones, and then we had Lee Buffont from Cornell University talking about distributed acoustic sensing. Now, at the time, DAS was a very hot topic, so we were really excited to have her present to us. And so if we can bring those researchers together in IARPIC space, share new technologies, also do this cross-sector thing, I think this is what defines success for our team. It's really the information sharing that we hope to be a conduit for. The next slide, please. So that ends the presentation of our team and what we're trying to accomplish with this meeting. So now it's opened up for anybody to raise your hand, please, or put comment in the chat, and let us know any of your thoughts with regard to the IARPIC research plan, either the questions from the Federal Register or some of these questions which we're prompting to start the discussion. So I will look for someone to raise their hand, or I can call on people who've joined the meeting. So I'm not seeing anybody. Is there something in the chat? Data pages. Okay, it talks. Meredith is sharing the current implementation plan and where our team's sections are in the plan. So I think I will start by asking Hilmar to come on. Hilmar is also from the Department of the Interior. I know him from that work, and we interact in some venues. So I'm really interested to see what Hilmar has to say. And also, I'll put out that feeler, like we are looking for a federal co-lead for data. So I don't know if you'd be interested in that role.
Well, must be a slow day if you're calling on me. Well, like I said, I was here just kind of see what was going on and kind of feel things out. I guess one thing that, one comment I have when I saw the previous slide, there was an issue there about data versus tech. I think to me, data is just the underlying raw data, and tech is whatever is used to acquire or process that data. But more broadly related to the introduction, we talked about FAIR and CARE. One big issue that we always have in the federal arena is the whole issue of FOIA and hesitancy of partners wanting to share data, and that's something that I guess I don't really have any answer to, or is anything that the group could resolve. That's kind of an underlying policy legal issue, but to me it seems like that's always kind of a big stumbling block when working with various partners, is that hesitancy. And as a data manager, my advice to folks is, well, you can try to ask permission, and if folks are okay with it, then great. If not, basically I say, well, don't put it on the federal system, just to be safe. So to me, that's one of the biggest data issues. It's just the whole that intersection of care and fair data.
I really like that as a thought process of talking about why implementing that authority to control might be critical in actually getting people to share their data and understanding what are the boundaries of what does need to be shared and what shouldn't be shared unless there's certain concerns from certain people. And a FOIA is a really, really good exploration into sort of the legal stuff that's already there that we know about requirements, but convincing people or understanding a framework of how it can be protected as well. Because I mean, that's the thing, right? Data needs to be protected in order for people to want to share it.
Right. And I think, because there is, that lack of guidance and precedent, that, folks are obviously hesitant. And I think a lot of folks are looking for guidelines. And I guess at this point, there just aren't really any around. So that, I think that kind of makes it difficult, other than saying, well, just let us read it from your system, but don't give it to us, or, something like that, just kind of off the cuff stuff. I think that's an area that, needs some more work and some just general guidelines for folks to follow. Because I think folks are interested in collaborating, but, they just don't want certain things out there in the open. And, currently there's really no guarantee that is possible.
Great, thanks for the comment. And I think you're pointing to an issue, probably from your experience, that this is why we need to talk to people in the field who are doing this important work, that we can ground the plan seems like a very lofty thing, and the principles themselves are so lofty, but when it comes down to it, it's usually a very small set of problem issues. Like, well, if you give us the data, it can be FOIA'd, so don't give us the data, that sort of thing. Unless, I think we have FOIA exceptions, and that'd be a whole lecture or seminar, right, to get into the nitty gritty. But then
Does
of the data
anybody
are very
know
few.
who could give that talk? If anybody thinks about someone who could give that talk, that would actually be a really fun,
Oh, it's not fun. Very boring.
I'm
it's
the
not
one who likes data management, right? Says
well, FOIA is a regulation, it's not data management. So it's the exceptions are by law, and it has to fit in these categories. So there are FOIA experts in the government, and we could invite one of them to come talk to us for sure.
But I'm just thinking how it's a fascinating thing to think about. Government transparency versus authority to control is an intersection that I think needs delineation.
Okay, so unless Hilmar has something else, I'm gonna go to the next person. I'm just gonna go down the list of people I want to pick on. Andrew Barrett, sorry.
Jonathan, I had put a question in the chat related to that last one. I was wondering if there was
Oh.
a FOIA exception for around Indigenous data sovereignty.
No, that's not one of the 7 exceptions.
It's not. So even if you're partnering, if they're partnering with a federal Okay.
Yeah, no, I had a discussion with USGS about this, and that's a challenge, was a challenge for their partnerships with tribes. It has to have a commercial interest, basically, and that doesn't necessarily. So, sorry, Andrew, are you willing to come on screen and tell us what you're thinking about?
Well, I am, yeah. Hi, I'm Andy Barrett. I'm at the National Snow and Ice Data Center. I'm also part of the Navigating the New Arctic Community Office. So I was thinking kind of along the lines of FAIR and CARE. And I think one of the, well, I had a thought on the discussion we've just had, and that is that a lot of the FAIR principles relate to metadata rather than to the actual data, right? It is as much about knowing that the data exists, that information can be found and is well described, as opposed to actually making that data available to people. There's provisions in there that talk about, well, if the data goes away, we still know it existed. So I think that was just something I thought is important to bring out. But I think when we're talking about actually working with the data, I think that kind of a key thing that I see within a lot of data sets is there's a lot of emphasis on making the data findable and accessible, but often it's the last two parts which get left by the wayside. And I think, you know, there is a need to both education of the community to get them to understand how to make their data better interoperable and reusable. Comes down to data formats. It comes down to just simple kind of structuring. I think there's a lot of work that could go into making that a lot easier for people by building tools to do that. Whether that's format checkers or just simple interfaces that allow people to use controlled vocabularies to populate the attributes within files and things like that. So I think the need for that education, and also for building software tools, whether it's a web interface or whether it's some kind of software package that you can have on your computer, I think that's that would be a step forward, and I think making this data interoperable and reusable is about making it easy for people to do that, because it is a lot of work. And I think the more we can help with that as a community, it doesn't have to be one group of people doing it. It can be a community effort to build these kind of tools. And I think that's kind of absolutely critical as we go forward. Especially with limited funding and things like that. We don't want to have to spend our time futzing with data. We want to be able to do the analysis. So I think that's kind of the key thoughts that I had on this.
Would you be willing to share your concept of what is the best file format and download tool on this recorded presentation?
I mean, it depends on the data, right? You mentioned Excel. I kind of shy away from that. I think it's a gateway to bad data practices in a lot of cases. That's not to say that's not to say it's not a great tool. I mean, it is opened up analysis and science to so many people, right? Because it's there on your computer, right? But I do think that there are better ways of sharing that data and you can still work with it in Excel, but it does shut off and make life a little more difficult for people. So that would be my one soapbox and
So your soapbox is
comment there.
not Excel files, but
Yeah, I mean CSV and those kind of things. But then there's so many other formats out there that are much better suited for other types of data. And I think the other thing I would say that we need to be thinking about is not so much with a lot of data that are being collected. If they're small, but if we're collecting large data sets, then we need to be thinking about cloud optimized formats that allow us to leverage computing technology in a better way.
I will say I have several data pipelines into NSIDC data sets, and I find your data management very, very good over there. So good job.
That's good to hear. I'll pass it back.
So there was a discussion last week, the Polar to Global Interoperability Workshop, working group, whatever it's called, the interagency group. Someone from NSIDC was there, and we were debating about, I think it was a policy on moratorium, if we should allow people to hold data for a period of time after it's collected, and so on and so forth. And some data that are like collected by satellite, like satellite tags, get put on a network immediately as soon as it's collected. So that becomes public data in some cases, but then it's the products of that then would be subject to moratorium. So let people publish on their analyses before they go forward. But this is bringing it back to one of your comments is, there's so many of our data management workflows that involve the cloud. And it's that tool that really allows us to do our science in a scalable and efficient way. We control those tools as a community. So that's the place where we need to put these policies, like make your data open and accessible as soon as you post it to the cloud tool or you collect it from a satellite. Because if we wait for every individual PI to share it when it's comfortable for them, the data is just not going to be shared. It'll be years later and maybe lost. Any infrastructure that we pay for with tax-funded dollars should have these stipulations attached to them. I think that's a stand we can take as a community, because they're shared resources.
Yeah,
I
agree with that completely. I think we are, and I think there are a lot of kind of NASA and even in some cases NSF policies that are promoting that. I think it's getting the community comfortable with doing that. We have a lot of entrenched practices, and I think we just need to having open discussion about this and kind of building trust is and realizing that it's the ideas and not necessarily the data that are the valuable things. But I think it's a process of getting us towards that.
Great. So let's go down the list here. Anybody? Okay, I see someone's name, Ann Garland. Would you like to introduce yourself and give us some of your thoughts?
And we can't hear you if you're speaking.
I can come back to Ann later.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we hear you.
Okay, somehow I got turned off again. I'm sorry. I was trying to get it unmuted. So I represent a non-federal entity, a nonprofit that's been working in hazard science and the Arctic since around 2007. We are partnered with we do mostly hazard science and partner with community entities, usually government, like emergency management offices or whatever relevant department in the local government wants to partner and direct us as to what kinds of hazard sciences they want. And so we're collecting because it's all hazards, we're collecting a variety of different kinds of data. I work with the North Slope Boroughs Office of Emergency Management the most. I'm still in Utqiagvik doing that work right now. I leave this week, but we run the gamut of harmful algal blooms, tundra green engineering, erosion, hydrodynamics, permafrost sensors, whatever is needed. We try and find funding. So our data and the way we collect the data, we use community-based monitoring. So I just came off of an NAA for 6 years, and now we're in the throes of trying to figure out where we go next, as is everybody. But data collection is by the community themselves. So landowner permissions, all of that, plays into the fair and the care principles. That's right now trying to get landowner permissions to actually put the stuff in a repository is a stumbling block. I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but trying to make sure they understand what the Arctic Data Center is, that's a whole nother step, and trying to ask them what kind of sensitive data, characteristics do you want us to put on the data from your property, that kind of stuff. I don't know if anybody else is having those issues, but I am. Does that help bring up any questions?
That's a great perspective. I haven't heard that before, but that's why we need people like you on these team calls, so we understand the local issues.
Yeah, and some of it's just
reservations.
education, some of it's just education, but I have to have paperwork. I'm a nonprofit. I can't just go on a verbal. I have to have something written from them. So yeah, we got permission to collect the data, but then I'm going back and saying, okay, now I'm trying to apply those ethics of getting permission to put these in repositories, right? So it's a little easier if you have a public, right? You're collecting data on public land, but on private land, it's a whole nother ball game. So just thought I'd throw that out into the mix.
I'm looking at Lauren.
Yeah, and emergency management stuff is also one of, I worked on Deepwater Horizon prior to this, and that was a really interesting sort of during an oil spill. And if we think about an oil spill in the Arctic, there's a lot of, at-risk people, a lot of, land that people are worried about, and doing data management with that sensitivity during a hazard like that, or during, a catastrophe like that.
Yeah.
And thinking about how data management works, I've thought about it in my head, and that in terms of like, if my house is on fire, I'm going to run outside and tell somebody in a suit, a fireman's suit, that where my kids are sleeping, right? I'm not going to tell another random person that, but when your house is on fire, it's such a risk that you're willing to like share ridiculously sensitive information to get help. And I think during thinking about these hazards and data management is a new line of trying to figure out sovereignty and security.
Yeah. So pretty much a lot, unless you have like a, what do you call it? A tipping point like that, where you actually have You go from a hazard to a disaster, right? You have that tipping point. So most of what we're doing is preparedness, right? Collecting data for decision making and mitigation strategies. That's my focus. But a lot of that is gradual. You're in the like erosion in most community. It's an ongoing hazard plus a disaster at the same time, right?
Right.
It's like a gradual or surges. Like we're trying to get up a Arcus camera system to do the hydrodynamics, and we're just working with communities to collect data like that is a very, 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 very long process, and having to make sure that when you do it, you make the right steps for the data, and protection of any kind of sensitive information. I don't know. It's just unending. It's a cascade effect, just like in hazards.
Yeah, I love thinking of it as an axis in terms of like there's, foundational research that people just do and know. And then there's research on hazards that's sensitive and on people's private land. But then inching towards that, when the disasters happen, how do you do data management? And that's an interesting spectrum for Alaskans to be thinking about.
Yeah, because anything you learn, I mean, I'm also part of another effort called the Arctic Risk Management Network, which anybody on this call as well can be part of. But we have been trying since 2015 with some US State Department funds to reach out to territories, provinces, the lower order jurisdictions, plus small remote communities to have like this network where you want to share, right? All kinds of things that will help each other and build, because there isn't anything like that right now. Absolutely nothing. So trying to get people to share information, right? So we have this website that we were trying to finally publish and have a lot of interaction on it. So what happens to that information, like a discussion board, that kind of stuff? I mean, that's outreach, education, and mitigation, but it's data.
I could totally
Well,
go into the insurance side of this, but I think that's getting too off
yeah, we
topic.
should move on to Colin. I want to give everybody a chance. Colin Shaw, if you'd like to come on, well, you can come off mute and express anything you'd like about the data team, tech team should consider.
Get my video going there. I don't really have anything specific. I'm kind of more in a listening mode than comment. I know it's a small group, so maybe I should have come prepared with a little bit more to say. But I can tell you a little bit about my background. I'm a researcher at Montana State University. I'm currently doing a rotator position at NSF, so I'm kind of staying in with what's going on in the IRPC.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, and nice to meet you. So there was one more person I didn't recognize. Karen Wood, Rami Wood. Could you express anything you like for the good of the order?
For the good of the order, that's quite a charge you give me there. But no, I think this reflexive practice and drawing more of the professionals in, there's been so much of this process over the previous years. There's so much hurt feelings that now with the new tech and the speed and all the interest in what's going on federally and then on the ground locally with co-production and community citizen science, that this practice that you've demonstrated this hour, I think is really valuable. And I think we'll invite more to offer some more of the perspectives that you're looking for more of the participation that you're looking for.
Great, thank you. That's the idea of the outreach listening session. So I was here 5 years ago when we were doing it for the last plan, and they had very well organized outreach as well. But what I missed was the follow through. I didn't hear those voices for the remainder of the 5 years. So it's like we checked in with people at the beginning, and now here we are 5 years later, and we're just kind of checking in again. So I'd like to see more consistency throughout, and it's good for you to compliment us on and encourage us to continue this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment if I didn't call on you, or if you have another comment? And I guess that, I'd open that up for any of the co-leads who are, co-presenting with me. Any further thoughts? Okay. I think we can, Hazel or Meredith, were you going to close this out?
I guess I'll just one more time encourage people to, we have recorded comments from today, but if you want to have your comment put in your own words, submitted in the format that you would like, the exact words that you would like, really encourage people to do that through the Federal Register notice. I put that link in the chat already, and I'll do it again now.
I just re-added it. Yeah, great. It's impossible to monitor the chat while you're speaking. Anything else, Meredith? Sorry to interrupt.
Nope.
Nothing for me. I suppose there's a couple more of these coming up, so if there's other topics you're interested in, feel free to join future ones. And yeah, thanks everyone for being here and for the discussion today. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.